freedom of speech, your freedom of religion, the freedom and liberties that we have in this country are because of the Second Amendment. And never ever forget that.
She's not going to be the great savior for the Democrats, and they can't skip over the first black woman vice president with the whitest man ever in history, Gavin Newsom.
It's time that we, the people, take this country back.
And if you try to transition a child, you are guilty of child abuse, and every doctor, every nurse, every clinician that is helping that is culpable in that crime.
This thing is so full of pork that even Scrooge and the Grinch are happy about it.
There wouldn't be a First Amendment without the Second Amendment. Your right to freedom of speech, your freedom of religion, the freedom and liberties that we have in this country are because of the Second Amendment. And never ever forget that.
She's not going to be the great savior for the Democrats, and they can't skip over the first black woman vice president with the whitest man ever in history, Gavin Newsom.
It's time that we, the people, take this country back.
And if you
Well, hello, everybody. This is Congressman Andy Ogles coming at you live. This is episode 26 of Restoring the Republic. And all right, so it's post-inauguration. The liberal crazies are crying and the righteous Republicans are rejoicing. Now, I've got some special guests with me here today from Greenland, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So let's talk about President Donald Trump. And so, by the way, the whole atmosphere here in Washington, D.C. is totally electric. It is a new day. Now, you may have seen the forecast, and I would say there's a storm coming. It's Donald Trump, and we're going to make America great again. And so you look behind me, you see the ice, and you see crossing the Delaware. And so this is the historic moment that is the presidency of Donald Trump, now 47, in that he was president, he lost, now he's president again. And so what has he done in these first few hours of his presidency? One, promises made, promises kept. So you look at the J6ers, almost all of them to this point have been pardoned. My buddy Eli Crane, former Navy SEAL, member of Congress from Arizona, is literally at the D.C. jail right now with the likes of several Freedom Caucus members like Chip Roy, like Josh Burkeen, and some others. And they are making sure that those that are still being detained unlawfully, by the way, are being released in a timely manner. So we are being proactive in making sure that justice is truly delivered for those who were politically persecuted under the woke, quite frankly, criminal enterprise that was the Biden administration. And so on to Biden, or over to Biden for just a moment. That's why you saw this flurry of pardons, Fauci, and just the whole list, but his family. And I predicted that when he pardoned Hunter Biden, that he was going to have to pardon the rest of his family. Why? Because they have been a criminal enterprise. And so with that, so what has Donald Trump done? Again, he made the comment. Actually, we're going to pause there. I think you've got a clip.
Yeah. The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer.
Of America is back. Now, what you've seen from a foreign policy perspective Russia, Ukraine, the attacks against Israel, the advancing of China in Africa and South and Central America. Our enemies are on the move, or have been, because Biden was weak. But now what you see is President Donald Trump coming at the world from a position of strength, which will take us to the conversation of our special guest and Greenland in just a moment. And why that might be important, I'll give you my 2 cents and what I've been saying to the U.S. media, but then we'll talk to our friends and get their perspective as well. So let's go to the male-female clip. And again, as you've seen this transgender wokeness, which, by the way, just a few years ago would have been defined as a mental illness. I'm not trying to be mean. It was in the medical dictionary as such. But now you have President Trump taking action to fix it.
This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life.
So what you've seen is the Biden administration forcing this into all over, quite frankly, whether it's documentation or into society, but into our schools. And so as someone who is a father of a young girl, a student athlete, and you've seen young girls over and over again literally being injured by males pretending to be females, competing as such. In the prison system, we've seen males pretending to be females sexually assaulting their female counterparts because men were being housed with women. We've seen situations where men dressed as women have gone into restrooms, female restrooms, and have preyed upon women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, you have the right to be you. I have the right to be me. But if you're a dude in a dress, you're still a dude in a dress. Now, so President Trump has had 200 executive actions, and I'm going to read from my notes: 42 executive orders, memoranda, and proclamations, 115 personal actions, and of course, that gives you a total of a little over 200. So when I had dinner with President Trump just a few days ago down in Mar-a-Lago, he said, I'll do 100, 120. It's going to be amazing and historic. And then what does he do? Over 200. So he set a mark, and he blew through it. And again, historic. And what I think you're going to see from this administration of President Trump is historic action after action after action, one of which will be the closing and the securing of the southern border. Now, again, regardless of where you are on immigration policy, a nation in and of itself is going to be defined by secure borders. And over the last 4 years and under the Obama administration, we did not have that. We've got to get back to law and order. What you're going to see over the next few years is deportations. Now, the left is going to scream and cry and going to show pictures of little kids. But if someone is here illegally, then they should have to come back to our country through the legal process. Look, if I go to Disney World with my kids and I sneak in the back gate, they're going to kick us out. You're not going to have the left woke media coming to my aid because I broke the law to get my kids into Disney World. Right? The county fair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever it is, if you're sneaking in and you're there illegally, you should have to leave. And they may not let you come back, quite frankly. But if you want to come in the right way. There's no difference when it comes to immigration. When you look at Mexico, Canada, UAE, the rest of the world, that's how they do immigration. You come into their country. If you want to work, you have to get a work visa. You have to follow their laws. And in most cases, you can never become a citizen, and you have to pay their taxes. This is a format that is done globally, and yet we have held ourselves to a different standard. This is our nation, in the same way Greenland is its own nation. It has the right to govern itself and make its own decisions, albeit a part or territory of Denmark. Now, what I've talked about, and this is a good segue on the immigration topic to sovereignty, is that we would like, and now keep in mind, President Trump mentioned this idea of acquiring Greenland. Now, some kind of laughed it off that, oh, well, Trump's just being Trump. But when you look historically, the United States has wanted to acquire Greenland for over 100 years. It has incredible strategic value. The people are amazing. And when you look in the encroachment in the Arctic Circle, in the Arctic shipping ways, China and Russia. Now, let's take a step back. who are our two largest adversaries on the global scale, right? The global landscape. That'd be Russia and China. And arguably, who's our biggest adversary? And I would argue the existential threat to North America and Europe, and it would be China. And so what we don't want is China on our doorstep influencing policy, shipping, minerals, etc. And so it's time for the United States to put its foot down and say enough is enough. So with that, I've kind of said my piece and why I think it's important that we at least have the conversation of Greenland becoming a territory of the United States of America. We're quite frankly closer. I would argue we have a lot in common. We have the ability to maximize the resources in that sphere. We do more for the security of Greenland than Denmark. Copenhagen has even admitted to such. And so it makes sense to have those folks have a say in their own destiny and their future as we go forward. So look, I'm going to mess this up. Mr. Kuno Fencker.
That's absolutely fine.
Oh, okay, well, you're very kind. And then we have Jørgen Boassen.
Yes.
All right, so Kuno, tell everyone about yourself. Now, to be clear, these gentlemen are here of their own accord, not in an official capacity. So as they tell you about themselves, understand they got here on their own. Yes, sir.
Cool. My name is Kuno Fencker, and currently I'm a lawmaker in Greenland, but I'm not here in that capacity. I'm in a capacity of my private matter. And we've been working on Greenland's independence for quite some time, and I've been making a bill, just like Andy has here, in regards to activating our right to external self-determination, which means we want to become a sovereign state. And Greenland has been colonized by Denmark in 1721. Our trade was monopolized by the trade agreement in Denmark in 1774, just 2 years before you became independent. So our philosophy here is very American. We want to be independent, we want to be a sovereign state, and we want to use our right as a people, as a Greenlandic people, to use that right. And that right, I made a bill so that the parliament in Greenland could approve that we will make our government to work on activating our right to self-determination. And we had to make a compromise here because they didn't fully activate it, but it was like we make a commission that will look at how do you interpret Article 21 in our Self-Rule Act, and who should be eligible for a referendum. And we will, of course, go by according to the ICJ and probably look at New Caledonia. You have to be a resident for 30 years if you want to be, eligible for a referendum, because you just can't go there and, imagine that you are a Greenlander. If you're a Dane, if you're a Faroese, you should have your right there, but we will have our right as a people to decide our own future. So that's where we are in a way. So right now we need to activate it so that we can negotiate directly with Denmark, with the US. So the matter of has Denmark the legal right to Greenland? In my opinion, no. If you have annexed a country without a referendum, without a plebiscite, in my opinion, you don't have the right. The right is within the Greenlandic people. That's why it will be important if we decide in Greenland to activate the Article 21, that we will negotiate with the US, with like-minded states, or we could even negotiate with Denmark on, becoming a Commonwealth, becoming a sovereign state with a compact of free association. It could be a compact of free association with both countries, because we know that Denmark has neglected the defense and security of Greenland for many years. And we know that it's a vital importance for the United States, the North American continent. Your security is my security. That's right. And, we want to work together. We want to diversify our economy. We want to cooperate with many, many things. We just need to do it in a, orderly manner.
That's right. And you raised two really important points. One was talking about, in order to participate in the referendum, you actually have to be a citizen. You have to be someone who is, or not just a citizen, truly a Greenlander. So you mentioned 30 years. And so again, as we in the United States have this conversation about our own destiny, and what do you do with 10, 12, 15 million people who over the last 4 years have come here illegally, we have to recognize the fact that we have a right as a people to that self-determination. And we can't let, quite frankly, illegals define who we are when it is our country, our nation. We get to decide who comes in, and quite frankly, we get to decide who leaves. Now, the other aspect of it is the critical importance of Greenland as you look into the next decade and decades. When you look at those minerals, when you look at the oil and gas, when you looked at the shipping lanes that are becoming more and more passable, there's going to be an incredible, I think, renaissance in Greenland, an opportunity for the growth of your country and your people as you go forward. And then the question I would argue that you have to ask yourself or your people is, who would you rather, who is most aligned with you? You have this sense of freedom and independence and the right to self-determination. These guys agree with you, by the way, on the painting behind me, is that you have that right. We had that right and do have that right. And quite frankly, that's why I offered the piece of legislation to say, you know what, we're going to do more for Greenland in the next 10 years than Denmark has done for Greenland in the last 100. And so with that, let's jump to Jørgen. And I know I butchered your last name, but tell us a little about, now you're a boxer. Now, big arms, I was going to challenge you to an arm wrestling match, but then common sense kicked in and I figured I would just defer. But tell us about you. And you may or may not be a Trump fan.
I am a Trump fan.
I know you are.
Yeah, my name is Jørgen Boassen. I'm a bricklayer. I have my own firm. And it all started in 2007 with Obama went to try to get to the office. And that time I have some hope for him that it will be new change because he was a colored man and it was new time for maybe America. But the first time was very disappointment, and after that second time I think he will maybe better that second time. But nothing happened. The world was on fire, the economic inflation, everything was in chaos, in healthcare, everything was, and even we are far away from Greenland. I think it's when the U.S. political is in not good position, is also affect us in Europe and Greenland. Then suddenly Trump come down the escalator from Trump Tower and say, I will run for the office. And I was looking, okay, who's that guy? I know him, who he is, but right. I have always been fascinating of him. And I look at what his was political agenda and I say, whoa, I never heard and seen like this before. Is this a new change for the new world in peace?
Well, to your point, Donald Trump says, in my humble opinion, what everybody else is thinking, but maybe too afraid to say. Now, one might argue that sometimes he doesn't have a filter, and
just like me.
That gets him in trouble. And as someone who does the same thing, it's gotten me in trouble. Yeah. But I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's okay. But I'm just to have no filter, so I offend many people sometimes with talking about politics.
Welcome to my office.
I couldn't recognize me. I see him myself because the political correctness has been damaged for the democracy in the world.
Yes.
And that's why when I got that change last year to the election, when people say to me, you cannot make a difference here from Greenland. So I get a contact with Tom Dance from Daybreak, American Daybreak, and get contact with him and talking with him, and suddenly I was invited to come here and knocking on the doors in Pittsburgh and try to convince people to vote for Trump. And I was also on the rally and also the election night party in West Palm Beach, and I was so amazed how people here are fighting for the democracy and doing all the walking, knocking, driving, everything that grassroots movements do here in U.S. is very important for what U.S. is.
Well, and it should be noted that, the Obama, or rather the Biden administration, the Harris campaign, had all these wackadoodle celebrities endorsing her, quote unquote, working for her, and they got their butts kicked. Donald Trump has one entrepreneur bricklayer from Greenland, and we dominate Pennsylvania. So thank you.
Yes, we did.
But you hit the nail on the head. It was all about the grassroots. It was about the people, right? It's about the border and the economy, right?
Also that the war with Ukraine and Russia. I was really afraid because the Danish Prime Minister was the front leader to the war against Russia, and to use billions of money to Ukraine, and instead they don't use money to the military in Greenland and surveillance of Greenland. They have not done nothing the last 5-6 years. I'm very worried about this and say to myself, okay, someday the Chinese or Russian will come to a shore and say to them, like, here we are, if you want to make a war with us, we can be also here in Greenland. So that's why it's very important for me the U.S. will be more in Greenland. U.S. never has left Greenland since Second World War.
That's right.
That's why it's very important to me, okay, the government should make more agreement with U.S. about the surveillance and military present in Greenland.
So we talked about kind of the historical backdrop of the United States desiring Greenland. We've talked about the strategic reasons why, and I think why it's mutually beneficial. We talked about the increased threat from Russia, but more importantly, or worrisome China, when you look at the Arctic Circle and for you guys, the Greenlanders. So let me ask this question. I'll first come to you from the perspective of a legislator, and then come over to you as the perspective of an entrepreneur. So if your bill was adopted and let's say all the details and whatnot were worked out with Denmark, and Greenland had voted that you wanted to become some sort of independent state and a territory with the United States. Again, we're not married to the idea, but like we've got to set the stage. What would it mean for Greenland going forward to have that type of close relationship with the United States? I'll ask you that question.
Well, first of all, we already have a good cooperation. It can be better, of course. Yeah. We will better it. And also in regards to the situation in regards to the melting ice of the North Pole and the new shipping routes, I absolutely agree we have to do something. We have to adhere to the United Nations Law of the Sea Convention, utilize our right as indigenous people because it's icy waters. We have to do the same as the Russians do in their Arctic waters. Just like the Panama Canal, we will have to utilize icebreakers. We will have to utilize a great military presence or with dual use equipment that can also utilize it to help the Greenlandic civil people. But especially making money out of the new shipping routes and ensuring that there are no other vessels from other lands, other countries that are just sailing by on free passage or innocent passage. It has to be controlled. It has to be surveilled. We will need all kinds of equipment that will benefit the Greenlandic people also, but also benefit the security of the North American continent, because your security is my security and vice versa. So that's my perspective, and we want to cooperate. So,
well, and then to give the viewers context, so let's say if Greenland were to become a territory of the United States, what that would do is there's a 200 nautical mile buffer that would be enforceable by the United States and Greenland. So that's critical for shipping and control thereof, for military and security. Like you said, the security of Greenland as we go forward is going to be critically important to North America. So whether you're Canada, the United States, whether you're Mexico, the security of Greenland, when you look to the horizon, you look over the next 10 years, is going to become more and more important. And we've got to start preparing and thinking along those lines. And so this idea that Trump mentioned in passing is being considered seriously from our perspective. There's a recent poll that says many Greenlanders, a small majority, I think it was 54 or 56%, support becoming a part in some fashion of the United States. And so it has momentum. Whether or not we'll be able to be successful to be determined. Like there's a lot of international treaties and all the other such that's got to be considered. But that being said, I like where we're at. I like the potential and the possibility. But let's ask that question from your perspective as someone who's an entrepreneur or been an entrepreneur, a bricklayer, someone who works with his hands, right? You get out there and you get it done. Someone who knocked doors for Donald Trump. What would it mean to know, and we already have your back, but what would it mean to have that next level relationship with the United States and knowing that Trump literally has your back?
I think it would be the full benefit for Greenland's future. Also in search and rescue, we only maybe have 2 helicopters right now in the west coast, and it will take several time to cross the inland ice and try to get to East Greenland to rescue and something. So in that area we are very weak and have more need for get to doing things to that better. And also in mining and oil industry, I think the American investing company can be a big benefit for Greenland's future.
But I would say, and I agree 100%, the opportunity when you look at China's dominance on some of the rare earth metals and minerals, there's a tremendous opportunity to increase our partnership with Canada because their wealth of resources, and they're going to benefit tremendously from that. But then you have this opportunity to do the same with Greenland. And so there's this infrastructure that needs to be built. For those of you that don't know, Greenland is a rather large landmass. The vast majority of the population is located in 2 cities. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's not a lot of connectivity between the two. It's snowmobile or helicopter. And so what I also think could happen over the next decade and 2 decades is a new tourism industry from Americans who suddenly see this as part of their homeland, as part of our territory, and there's this incentive to want to be a part of what Trump has done and negotiated, which quite frankly, I think technically would be the largest land acquisition or joining of our republic in history. But that being said, what it has to be, and I think you would agree, something that benefits both. And I think it's your security interest is our security interest. Our ability to make best use of your minerals, your resources, and your riches to benefit your people and ours is in our best interest. And the further we can push China out of the Arctic Circle, push Russia out of the Arctic Circle, the better it is for everybody.
And also we are in American continental, so it's very important that make that clear. We are an American continental. Also ancestors are in Canada and in Alaska, so we are closer than to that world than Europe. Culturally, we have been European in 300 years, but in our DNA and culturally and as native, we are among Alaskan and Canadian Inuit.
Final thoughts?
Well, we have the same. I think we have the same DNA in a way in our thoughts about independence, and it should be the decision of Greenlanders.
That's right.
And Greenlanders should decide on becoming let's say, a Commonwealth with Denmark or a Compact of Free Association with the U.S. or. The only thing that is non-negotiable for Greenland's side is that we want to be a sovereign state because we want our own citizenship, we want our own membership at the UN and other international organizations. We want our right to have our own foreign politics, but we are not after utopia. We know we are only about 60,000 people in Greenland in an extremely big area that is also vital for the security. So we are not after utopia, but we know that we have to cooperate in regards to defense and security and diversification of our economy. United Airlines is going to fly from this summer from Newark to Nuuk. So Nuuk York, you could call it, maybe, just for fun, And, we want to connect with the rest of the world. And we don't want to just only be connected to Denmark, and we want to expand to the rest of the world. We want to have our say in the rest of the world, but we also want to evolve our economy. And critical minerals are very important resources that we know is vital for the security of the world also. We need fair competition, and if we need fair competition, we have to be, we know who we are allied with. We know that. So there's no question about we will cooperate with the US in those matters. And we have other vast resources like oil and gas, but that has been stopped by the current government. But my personal view is that we have to utilize those resources. We have to utilize all the resources we have, diversify, also in regards to culture, exchange, language, education, we got to do something. Yeah. I want the prosperity of the Greenlanders also.
And you mentioned something that I failed to mention. So population of the country, roughly 65,000.
58.
Yeah, okay. So to give you perspective, so those of you from Tennessee, we have 95 counties. Maury County, where I was county executive, ranks 14th, 15th in size with a total population of about 100,000. It's like 102,000 individuals. So that gives you context when you look at it. It is a vast territory. It's a vast land with a rich history and culture and an amazing amount of resources. And quite frankly, and again, my position is with this closer allegiance with the United States of America, we can give the resources or so it's mutually beneficial because again, it's not technically a gold mine. It's an oil and gas and precious metals. But that being said, as we have all of this there, it's at our doorstep. You guys or your country, the Greenlanders, can benefit from it tremendously. And you had a final thought, and we need to take a selfie after that.
Yeah, we will. And also the future of Europe, we don't know what will happen. The inflation and the politicians are too leftist, and we don't know Europe is in danger right now. So we cannot be dependent of the security Europe can give us. They cannot give that us. Only US can defend us.
Well, and you talk about it, so we'll segue just a moment. You mentioned inflation, and so this will be my prediction over the next 2 years. So what you're going to see is some types of cuts, tax cuts from the Trump administration. Obviously, we'll be working on reconciliation and so forth in the House. And so what happens when you have that? So you're going to have short-term, I do believe, inflation. As what happens when you have tax cuts, you have that money staying in the household, you have increased demand, and so whether that's fuel, whether that's home goods, etc. But what's going to happen is because the manufacturing sector, because the entrepreneurs have faith in this economy, have faith in Donald Trump, the production will increase, and what will happen is you're going to see an equilibrium between supply and demand, and suddenly that inflation is going to go away quickly. So the Fed is about to meet in about a week. I'm on the Financial Services or the Banking Committee, which is affectionately called the Nerd Committee. I would say they will not make an interest rate cut at this meeting because of, again, where we're at inflation, to see what Donald Trump does and how it affects the economy. But that being said, this is Congressman Andy Ogles. You're here with Restoring the Republic, and our friends from Greenland. Thank you for making the trip. Thank you for being a voice of freedom and, quite frankly, common sense to your people, because as we go forward, you have the opportunity. Your voices is what's going to make Greenland even greater. Thank you, and God bless.
And if you try to transition a child, you are guilty of child abuse, and every doctor, every nurse, every clinician that is helping that is culpable in that crime.
This thing is so full of pork that even Scrooge and the Grinch are happy about it.
There wouldn't be a First Amendment without the Second Amendment. Your right to freedom of speech, your freedom of religion, the freedom and liberties that we have in this country are because of the Second Amendment. And never, ever forget that.
She's not going to be the great savior for the Democrats. And they can't skip over the first black woman vice president with the whitest man ever in history, Gavin Newsom.
It's time that we, the people, take this country back.